hello there. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Full Quota podcast. My name is Mpho and Tim, and I've got Tim Lace with me here to talk all things South African cricket involved. But remember, all Full Quota podcast is on One World Sports Radio. And if you'd like to advertise, please do email me at mpho@1wsr.com. The final two episodes of the season, we're reaching the end of the season. Well, we already have reached the end of the cricket season, but the end of our podcast season is getting there slowly. So we're doing a few more episodes. One will be talking about the transfers that have happened in the domestic season, and the other one is this podcast that's happening right here. So we're going to talk about all things cricket that's happening in South Africa. But before I do anything, Tim, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, mate. A little bit tired, but otherwise good. Kind of.
All the runs, eh? All the
Yeah,
runs.
tired of the from the, as you say, from the run machine that we've been witnessing over the last couple of games.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's quite interesting. Like, it was really nice to be at the Pink Day yesterday. And obviously the game at Willamore Park, people in Benoni in the East, yeah, stand up, were coming out to support the Proteas. Yeah, so today's show obviously will be South Africa versus the Netherlands, but obviously at the end we're going to talk about just the summer in general, what we thought and everything else, and what we're looking forward to coming after in the new season, because we technically are in the new season. It is April the 3rd, which means the new year for Cricket South Africa has started. So they go April to March every year. So, okay, Tim, the Netherlands had to come because the series was disrupted by Omicron in 2021. And then all of a sudden, we had South Africa needed to win both games in order to give themselves qualification. They needed to win both games, and now they've done that handsomely. Now they need to wait for Ireland to beat Bangladesh in some sort of a whipping and a hiding that, if they managed to do that, would make me think that there was some sort of match fixing. So effectively, South Africa are like fully in, but essentially Ireland need to beat Bangladesh by more than 80 runs with 17 overs to spare. It's something very interesting across all three games. They need to win all three first and then do that. But that's happening in May, but we all have an eye on that just to watch to see how it goes. But for all intents and purposes, South Africa are on the plane to India. Outside of that, we still had to obviously play the games, and we're going to talk about the games right now. Obviously, we spoke to Bert last in the earlier. If you want to do a recap, a preview, you can. And he obviously wasn't as excited about this Netherlands series as he was the first time we spoke to him. And so, when you obviously now the series is a damn squib, or became some sort of a damn squib, and obviously was very one-sided. Willamore Park game, Temba Bavuma scoring runs. What did you make of that? And Sisanda coming up with the goods, with the ball as well. What did you make of all of that, Tim?
Well, as you said, the platform had been laid with the fact that, without being too much disservice, it was effectively a Netherlands side which had a lot of youngsters in their setup, and they were missing a lot of first team players. So that obviously was going to make their job a lot harder. But you've still got to do the business. You've still got to go out there and do the business. The pressure was still there in terms of South Africa qualifying. There was still that possibility that they could have come a cropper, and they just did it efficiently. If you talk about that first game, it was probably more efficient than what we saw yesterday, in my opinion. I thought everything that we wanted to do in that first game, we got through. Everything that we wanted to see from winning the toss, which made the Netherlands' job a lot more difficult, was done. The fact that Bavuma was scoring runs now across formats, the fact that Sisanda Magala was saying, "This is why I told you that you should have picked me." Everything that South Africa needed to happen in that first game. So it gave them the confidence. That was the big thing. The one-day team had been suffering from a lack of confidence for the last 18 months. That win, even with all those caveats that I mentioned, gave the side that huge boost of confidence going into how they could express themselves in game 2.
So before we move to game 2, it's a bit of a slippery banana for me, because you're playing an associate nation, and you are expected to win. You're also expected to bowl them out and watch the over rate. And I think that was something that came up in the press conference, for Quinton's press conference before the game around the over rate. And I think against the West Indies, they were in trouble, but obviously that doesn't count to Super League or whatever it is. And it was in a T20. And so Rob mentioned that it was okay and leave it. But there's a lot of pressure because you haven't actually secured qualification. And obviously one slip up, and we saw happen at the World Cup, could lead you down a path that you have never experienced before, and a whole lot of embarrassment, right? But then Quinton was talking about the confidence in the team, the full backing that the coach gave them. And my thing was, what is full backing? Because my only issue is that I assumed coaches always gave full backing. There's that press conference where Mark Boucher went to bat for Temba. I thought that was the type of full backing you wanted, but it seems like there's a different thing. And I know I asked it in our WhatsApp group, but I'm going to ask it again. Can you explain what the full backing is, and you can explain the differences between a Mark Boucher-esque full backing in an ODI context and a Rob Walter full backing in an ODI context?
The Mark Boucher full backing was, in whatever form it was expressed by Mark Boucher, it wasn't believed by a certain group within the Proteas setup. Some of them did believe it, absolutely, but some definitely didn't. That's why you saw difference in performances. You had good performances and you had bad performances. There was a belief within that setup that you are telling me that you believe me, but either the way you're telling me or the way the things are being said post-match, during the match, post-series, tells me otherwise. It's telling me otherwise. It's telling me something completely different. There was a very clear disconnect within the Mark Boucher regime, in my opinion. With the Rob Walter regime, it's still early days. It still needs to come up against quality opposition. It still needs to come up against top 5, 6 ODI sides. That's still to be tested. But from what we can tell at the moment, it looks very much, it looks very much like the individuals believe in it. They believe in the message of positive approach. They believe in the message of expressing one's ability, expressing oneself in a positive manner. They believe in the way that they want to play is the correct way that the South African side needs to go in. So it is not so much that Mark Boucher wasn't doing the right things. I think sometimes he wasn't. But there were instances where, for whatever reason, the individuals that were there at the time didn't believe in that message. And whatever is happening at the moment under Rob Walter, they are believing in that message. They are believing in the way that they are, that their approach is the right way to go about it. It's a complicated one, but you just need to have a look and see at the different players, at how they were performing under Mark Boucher and how they are performing in this very short space of time, at how different things are. We will go into individuals later on, But just look at Aiden Markram and the turn there. There's a completely different player there. Completely different player.
Okay, it's an interesting way to put it. I'm just like, oh, sure, okay. It doesn't make Mark look good, and every time players go to the press conference say no, full backing and confidence, it just makes me question as to the decision, because I questioned the decision when it happened. I didn't want Mark to coach this team, but it makes Mark and Graham look bad, and and they're not doing it on their own accord. Obviously, the press, the media is asking. My only issue is this answer of full backing and confidence makes it seem like Mark was running some sort of a military camp instead of a team. Where why do you need my confidence? You're already in the side. Play to whatever it is. So it's a bit of a different thing. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't work it down that route because I wasn't there. I wasn't within that group. I don't have evidence that that is true.
No,
But
yeah,
it is true that that's the way it comes across. It came
yeah.
across like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know what Mark was doing, but okay, cool. That's fine. Anyway, happy Proteas, new regime, everything is happy. I think I agree with you on that game against the Netherlands, at Willemore Park. It just, they hit the button. And my worry was they would either start slowly or there would be some sort of pushback from the Netherlands. And then in turn, they would not necessarily rise to the occasion, but they rose to the occasion. And Sisanda is bowling really well right now. And it was really good. Temba just took the bull by the horns and just ran with that 90. Aiden scoring runs, which is a great thing. And we're going to talk about that as we move to game two. Because in game two, Temba was the guy we were all looking to score runs, but it wasn't him. It was a guy who, in my thing, well, let's say it took him 50 matches to score his first 100 in ODI cricket. That spans a whole total of 6 years. And Aiden Markram finally getting his maiden 100. I will acknowledge the 96 at in Sri Lanka in 2021. That was a really good performance. I thought he had turned the corner then, but then he gave us a series of 30s and 20s, as Aiden Markram usually does. Um, but first question to you, obviously Aiden scoring runs. We've spoken about Timber scoring runs, and Timber's in a purple patch. Aiden's in a little bit of a purple patch. How long does this purple patch last for you?
10 years.
For the next 10 years. Look, so my thing with Aiden is that I was actually talking to, and maybe this is a question, right? If Aiden wasn't captain of the under 19 team that won the World Cup, is his career different? Because the talent is all there for everyone to see.
Interesting. Interesting. That's
Because
an interesting one. The other point, the other one I would mention is later on, when he gets the ODI captaincy against India and gets completely smashed into submission. I think that he also took a massive hit there, mentally. I thought he thought, well, this is me. I'm gonna sail this. I'm gonna take it on, and he didn't take it on. He didn't take it on at all. So that, I think there were definitely times where a different approach, maybe less responsibility, as you say, early on, would he now be captain across at least 2 formats? If he had not got that, that's an interesting one for me. If he had not got that under 19 captaincy, but the management knew long term he was the go-to guy, would he now, at 28, be Test and ODI captain?
I think that comes out. I think that would have come out. My question is not around the captains, it's around his career and the numbers, right? Had he not been captain, the talent is there. Does he have more? Does he have better numbers now? Because there are a lot of people who see 30 as old. He's got 2 more years until 30. You're telling me this guy needs to be on a purple patch for the next 10 years. There's going to be questions around 32 where everyone's going to be like Rassi or even Temba. Oh, it's time to look for youngsters, right? This man's been in the setup for 6 years now, and he's only given us one ODI 100. And is it a question of and rightfully so. That India captaincy should never have happened. That I think CSA and I think Otis at the time, I'm assuming it was Otis, needs to take full accountability for that. But outside of that, if you look at his career with the talent that this guy has, he obviously hasn't, stepped up. But I want an Aiden now who's able to compete from a talent perspective as at the same levels as the Fab Four. Be as hungry and greedy to score runs and dominate opposition. Not the guy we've had for the last 6 years who shows you glimpses of his class, even against lower opposition. And then on top of that, then that against the better opposition in the world does not even step up or show up. And so that's my question around this purple pattern. Maybe did we mismanage Aiden? And had he not necessarily, or had he been captain, but not necessarily shoehorned into the team so quickly, could he have had a much better start to the career? Because you look at the Labreskachnis, Aiden's more talented than Manus, but Manus is racking up runs in ODIs and in tests, right? So, it's just a thinking piece, but maybe even for our listeners and our viewers, maybe you can write in the comment section what you think. But have we mismanaged Aiden? Or is part of all of this solely on him and his inability to adapt to a world where he has to be playing at because of his talent, but it's just he hasn't been able to do it?
So there are two things here. For me, and I know I'm sorry, like stuck record, you talk about the last 6 years. I think the Proteas setup has been mismanaged for 6 years. I think every single player that's played for the Proteas for the last 6 years has been mismanaged in one way or another. Some in a very minor way, and some in a massive detrimental way, which is where it has irreparably affected their careers. I will just go back to Stian van Zyl, just as an example. Yes, I absolutely. But also the player has to take some responsibility here. So it's not just entirely going to fall on CSA. It has to come down to Aiden himself. I would have thought by now Aiden would have found a bedfellow. He would have found somebody who he trusts, who he believes in. That guy he can rest his shoulder on with all his problems. I'm not sure he has that individual. I hope he has that individual in terms of Rob and Shukri. That would be fantastic. Yeah. That he's found them now. 28 is ideal age for kicking on. This is now the time for 20s and 30s is over. The time for averaging 50 in Test cricket and 45 in ODI is now. That's where he should be doing. That's what he should be doing in these formats. So yes, in a wider pool, I think the players have been let down for the last 6 years. Definitely, there have been times when Markram has basically just been told, "We know you're brilliant. Go out and perform." Some players need more than that. Some players need more than that. Some players need an arm around the shoulder. Some players don't. Some players don't need that. I don't think Faf needs an arm around the shoulder in any time of his career. He's got that inner belief, that inner confidence within himself, that inner fire within himself. I think Markram needs a bit more, and that's not to say that's just who he is. That's just who he is. That's
yeah. So because the other thing is right. That 175 yesterday, right? And we're talking game 2 now, but yeah, that 175 yesterday was probably one of the best ODI innings I have seen at the Wanderers. And we have seen some incredible innings. It ranks up there with Herschel Gibbs. It ranks up there with there's one ODI century at the Wanderers that beats all of them. And it's the AB de Villiers 30 ball 100. That you'll never see again in your life. And yeah, so that sits at the top. There's that 175 from Herschel in the 438 game that, for me, based on the situation of the series and the importance of that game and what we had witnessed in the preceding 50 overs
In 50
when
over cricket before that.
yeah, and also what Ricky Ponting was doing to us in that, right? That goes up there as well. And Ricky Ponting's 100 in that 438, because I was sitting there going, yo, dude, okay. This 175 is just a tier below that, but it's top five. And they've been World Cup final hundreds at this ground, right? But it's like, to me, I'm sitting there going, this is just as good as all of those. And the array of shots, the talent on display, the and this is coming from a guy who thought this guy shouldn't even be in the side, or also shouldn't be going to a World Cup this year with this team. The array of shots, the absolute dominance. And it was like I was watching him wearing Titans blue against against the Knights. That's how dominant he was. It's like he transferred that domestic dominance into this game, right? And so I was like, wow, okay, dude, I hear you, I see you. Was it that good for you?
My only, what's the word? My only word of caution on that would have to be, and it's not his fault, would be the opposition. That would be my only worry. That
Yeah.
I not worry, but my only sort of, I wouldn't have him in that category. I just wouldn't. I mean, it's fantastic. It had everything. It did have everything. But it was against an opposition that was really up against it. It was against an opposition that was really tired. It was
But
against an
you can only
opposition
play
that,
in front of you.
as I said, it's got nothing to do. It's got nothing to do. Aiden could not have done any more. But I looked
But
at
how
that.
many
I
times
looked
has
at that. I
Aiden
looked at that.
played an Ireland or a Netherlands or a Sri Lanka and struggled to put them away? Even
Yeah,
against the
that
West
is a
Indies,
good.
yes. And so my thing was that, okay, if it was just like 100, I was like, okay, cool. But this was 100 at a strike rate of over 100. It was the display in itself was one befitting of you putting away a poor quality bowling attack. And to me, I was more comfortable with that, because then hopefully when you play better opposition, you'll adapt to that. But I can't fault him. I can't come in and say, nah, it was the Netherlands. That was still as good as 100 I've seen in a while.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe I'd be a tad critical. Maybe I haven't been in the top 10,
What
maybe
is
or
me
top
top
8,
eight?
something like that. Maybe top 8. Top 5, I think, is just a little bit of a stretch. But look, it was fantastic in every way. Um,
Yeah.
and unlike Miller, it was faultless. That was the big thing.
Yes.
Miller's innings was anything but faultless. And Netherlands will be regretting the missed chances against Miller. But as you say, Markrams had everything, and it was a special innings. No doubt about it. A special innings.
Yeah. Look, but how do you feel about Aiden getting in the runs? Like, I know obviously we're all very happy for her to have Temba in the runs, but if I look at that top, a lot of people talk about the top six, right? And you can't necessarily change it, right? Because you've got you've got guys playing at that high tempo, slightly. I want to call it assertive because aggressive. It's a one level below aggressive. Assertive cricket. They are. You've got obviously Rassi, who averages 70. You've got Aiden now, who's can bat at a strike rate of above 120, and in T20s it's 140. Of the last year, it's 170. You've got David Millen. We know what he can do. You've got Hannah Clarkson. We know what he can do is in this format, because limited overs is his thing. Obviously, you've got Quinny at the top. How important is Aiden getting runs? Is it the final piece of the puzzle for the Proteas in terms of building a batting unit that's can compete with Australia and England and India.
Yeah, look, Aiden for the last year has ticked the box in T20 cricket. And maybe that series against the West Indies, maybe he's turned the corner in terms of Test cricket. That is the long-term hope. The area of concern for both of us, and it has been for months, is this area, ODIs. Average of the mid-20s. He was bowling more and more. He was batting up and down the order. It was kind of like the guys that were there before him, that behind him, were not really doing the business, which meant that he had an even longer run than perhaps he deserved at the time. But the fact that he's scoring these runs is absolutely massive. Because everybody's known the talent, everybody's known the way that he can play. The fact that we have now got a top six, as you say, that can score an 8 and over in that first power play without too much bother. We have that ability with Quinton de Kock, with Markrams. We have that ability to be able to do that. It's huge. It is absolutely massive, because you talk about X-Factor players. Aiden Markrams is an X-Factor player. Hasn't been living up to it in this format, but that's what he is. That is what he is. He is an X-Factor player.
And that's why coaches want him.
He can change games. He can change games. Yeah.
And to certain extent yesterday, when South Africa were in that spot of bother, having lost, I think, 2 wickets in quick succession, and obviously Rassie not doing well, and then obviously David Miller, Heinrich Klaassen coming in, they had a 50-run partnership. You were thinking, this guy hasn't gone to 100 before. If he loses his wicket, we are probably going to try and get to about 250 and see if we can't bowl them out, because we have a better bowling attack. And I was really happy that he managed to carry that innings and be that anchor that Rassie and Temba are so often are in this format, and so I was really happy with that. And I think for me, he is the last piece. Now guys are looking at Rassie going, we need more from Rassie. Someone was saying to me, actually, in the press box, no, Rassie owes us runs. And I'm like, Rassie owes you nothing.
Nothing.
If you are sitting here complaining that Rassie's batting too slowly, the man averages 70, and he was averaging 70 in a period where South African ODI cricket was in the pits. It was rubbish. And he still averages like high 60s. There's no way. And I'm loving the fact that Rassie's batting at 3, and I'm like sitting there going, that completes everything.
If people watch those innings of Rassie, he's in form. He was timing the ball beautifully. Both
Even
games.
that India series last year.
Beautifully. So the fact that he didn't get runs will annoy him, but from a South African context, the fact that he's still in form and timing the ball is huge.
Yeah,
it's huge.
Yeah, and I think I'm happy that obviously him and Temba are scoring runs, which is great and awesome, right? From obviously, I was disappointed with the 370, Tim. I was like, like I did tweet. I said I've never been so disappointed in South Africa getting 370 in my life. I was hoping we could put 400 on them. We lost wickets. Obviously, guys were trying to do what I was hoping they were going to do, up the ante and push it up to 8 and over. But I'm really, really, like, I've only got positive words for this batting lineup. I think they have. We've worried that if we could be able to score 300 plus consistently over the West Indies and this series. I am comfortable that this team can do it against any other bad bowling lineup in the world. And the only thing that can stop us is good bowling. Is like if you have good bowling on a day, because these one-day decks are similar to T20 decks. They just favor batters now across the world. And South Africa is like the last place in the world where you're gonna get like decks that favor bowlers more than actually batsmen. So I'm like, okay, no, we can do this consistently even. at a high tempo, at an averaging about 7 to 7.5 runs and over across the 50. So I'm happy. But let's move to the bowling a little bit. That is my worry now. Um, I think we've found we have an option with Sisanda, and I think it's a great option, right? But I want him to play it more, right? I thought he was sensational. That Pfeiffer was, and if you're talking about full backing for players on the fringes like Sisanda, who was questioned around his weight, would have gone a long way if Mark was like, I still want him, even though he's not meeting fitness concerns. But there's a selection panel issue and discussion that maybe we need to go into long in the future. Sisanda is passed with flying colors across the West Indies, and he's just improved with every game, which is something that's amazing. And I'm so excited to see him play. I hope literally he gets into India tonight and they put on that yellow shirt and be like, go out there and show us how good you are. But he's the one guy I'm like, okay, I'm happy. Marco Jansen, I'm not sold on in terms of ODI cricket, even though you hope that it test will translate. It hasn't. Kagiso and Anwich, I'm happy with where they are right now this year. I'm just worried that we need to find a way to get them firing on all cylinders and maybe even consider playing just one. And Sisanda. Lungi also looked good in patches. So we've got a bowling core that can take us to the World Cup. My big worry is to Shamsi. I know he's off form, and I understand maybe why he's off form. I think he's been focusing on daddy duties for a while post SA20. So even in SA20 he wasn't at his rearing best. And so I know obviously life happens and everything else. And I'm hoping that's the excuse, because then that can be fixed quickly. Because he's the only one in this whole full backing era that hasn't necessarily taken that step forward. Marco's taken a step forward in tests, but he hasn't taken that step forward in ODIs. But maybe it's a bridge too far for him. But Chamsy's my worry, because Sisanda's looking great. Bjorn, if you give Bjorn an opportunity, he's never leaving that team. And we're going to India, so we might need 3 spinners in your 11, and obviously Aiden, because you don't want. It was such. I was trying to figure out how he was feeling yesterday watching Aiden take a lot of his overs. And it feels to me he's bowling very cautious because he doesn't want to be hit because of what's happening on the high field. But my question was then, isn't Coach Rob then saying, no, bowl that fuller length, let it go? Or it's actually not full. It's actually he needs to drag it back a little bit more because he's been too full and too leg side-ish too middle for my liking. Yes. You need him to be you need to be on either one side. You need to be offside or leg side. You can't be middle stump.
Yeah.
Start on middle stump, you're gonna go.
His problem is his lines. His lines for this moment. Yeah. His legs are not so much a problem for me. It's his lines. It's his lines. So when he's bowling to right and a left-hander, he doesn't fix it. So he's bowling the same line to the right and left-hander, which obviously is going to be going to be a problem. Even Morris said it in comps. He said, when he's firing, his lines are correct. When he's firing, Chris Morris in commentary.
So then
spoke.
Yeah.
If he's bowling correct lines and tucking the batsman up, batsmen struggle, and he is a wicket taker. He'll get wickets. If he is bowling too much width to any batsman, he's in trouble. He bowls too much width. He goes for runs. He doesn't get wickets. If he doesn't get wickets, then there's no point in playing him. He's a wicket taker. You're not playing him for going for 6.5 and over. You're playing him for 3 wickets for 50. That's why you're playing him. Yes. 3 wickets for 55, 60, whatever.
How do we get him back to his best?
He needs a confidence boost. We talk about that. We talk about what I just said earlier. He requires an arm on the shoulder. That's what he requires. He requires not so much backing. See, this is we go back to the backing situation. Backing somebody is not playing them week after week after week with nothing, telling them nothing.
Yeah,
that's not backing. That's That's just being a lamb to the slaughter. Honestly, that's just not backing at all. Backing is giving clear instruction of what you want from him, clear instruction, and then giving him the feelings that he wants. So you've told him what you want from him. He says he wants that field. Give him that field. If he fails, then he's failed in his terms. Then you can start to think about somebody else. But he does seem to me that he needs a bit of an arm out the shoulder and say, you know what? I know those T20 leagues are enticing at the moment, but just hang on. There's a World Cup right in the corner. There is a place for you, because there is a place for Shamo for the next couple of years if he wants to stick it out. For the moment, there is a place there. There is definitely a place there.
I think it is very fixable. I think I'm not on the train of no, Shamsi should not be going to the World Cup. It's a question of finding out, what he's struggling with, and fixing it, because he's devastating when he's been. And the other thing for me is whenever he plays India, he always reverts to this Shamsi we know. And I hope we don't get there, but we do need, and maybe it is rest. I don't know, but I hope coach. I trust. Well, I think they've given us enough now for us to trust their processes, Shooks and Rob, to get the right things, because I think even from a bowling perspective, they did well to bowl the Netherlands out at the Wanderers. I thought it was a tough wicket to bowl on. I was like, oh wow, I think the Wanderers produced a belter of a wicket yesterday, and I was like, okay, it's gonna be tough. But they managed to ball guys out, and that's how you evade penalties, overrate penalties. So I thought they did well, but Sisanda was just immense. And guys, the Yorker came back with Sisanda. Okay, it wasn't a Yorker; it was like a full length ball at the stumps, well directed, with good enough pace. And it worked. Especially, obviously, it is against the Netherlands, and we'll say that. But I was really, really happy. Okay, let's close out. What a summer of cricket we've had, Tim. We had the SA20, which brought everybody back. It kind of brought the fans back into cricket again. We've had so much bad news, but that SA20, even though some of us didn't agree how it went down or whatever it is, but anyway, it's jolted South African cricket public back into the game. Started seeing fans coming to the game. It then lit the spark for the T20 Women's World Cup, which we came second in, and like the girls are being seen as heroes even though they lost the final, and we need to try and pick up from that. Domestically, obviously, we had our first promotion relegation. Knights got relegated, which was great. Fine, well, not great, but we kind of knew that coming into the summer. Obviously, we had drama in Division 2, which is what you want, because it can bring eyeballs to the game. Obviously, the West Indies came to South Africa. Test team looks like they have a bright future ahead of them, like World Test Championship 2020. Tim, you're running away from me. I don't know what's going on.
No, carry on. My battery is running low. I don't know why.
Okay.
Carry on.
Cool. Okay, and then obviously we had the Netherlands series. Well, that's the perks of podcasting and YouTube. And we had the Netherlands series as well, which was a success. The limited overs teams looked very good. We had really great T20s at Centurion with the West Indies, well attended as well. And so, as Tim tries to find his charger, what do you make of this summer of cricket, Tim? I'm a fan. I thought it was great, but obviously now we need to build on it. But what are your thoughts on this summer of cricket?
Okay. All right. Okay. I apologize for the brightness, but there we are. We are where we are.
Oh, good. All good.
It was fantastic, dude. It was fantastic. I don't think it could have gone any better. I think if you'd written a script, say September, said this is what we want, I don't think you could have written a better Oscar-nominated script. I really don't. I really don't. Look,
Oscar-worthy.
look. SA20 put money in the bank. What did South Africa need? They needed money in the bank. Cricket South Africa. What do they say to the women? They said to the women, perform well, and then we will, we will promote women's cricket again. They've done that. And it's now up to Cricket South Africa to back them, give women's cricket a proper following, a proper backing. The promotion relegation was a fantastic initiative to see it come to fruition in its first season. I know there's a lot of discussion about it, but I think if you just look at it, if you want good quality cricket being played, that is what you got. You got good quality, good competition. You got games that mattered on the final day of the domestic season. They mattered. They all mattered. No games were petered out into nothing, just boring draws. So those are huge ticks. I think they are huge ticks. Huge ticks for the players that were involved. Huge ticks for Cricket South Africa for getting the right people involved in the season. I can't fault the season. The only issue that I have, and you and I said it at the right at the start when SA20 was coming through, we said, don't forget about the guys at the bottom. Don't forget about the guys at the bottom. And in that final games of the season, both in Division 1 and Division 2, the commentary disappeared. Completely.
Yeah.
Commentary disappeared completely. It was as if, you know what, we've got our SA20, we've got our Proteas. That is what it said to me. And I hope that's not true going into 2023, 2024 season. I hope they're going to correct that. Because you need that. You need that. You need that to make a strong Proteas men and women setup. You need to look after what is effectively our grassroots cricket.
Yes.
But it was a huge tick from everything that went off. I just hope they utilize this position now. Take advantage of it. Don't kick it in the grass. Find ways of giving what we have to the masses. Find ways of taking the game to everybody. It was a fantastic season, no doubt about it. Fantastic season from September right until now. Enthralling for everybody involved, so it's fantastic. I just say, just make sure you don't kick it in the grass. Hold on to what we've got, and look after the players.
So there's a couple of things I'd like for the new season. I'm with you. I think they have outshot their expectations with distinction. I didn't expect to think SA20 would be this big, and it was. And they just found that marketing mouse. They just found that sweet spot. Fans came back, even though CSA, I think the prices were slightly too high. There was a issue with all the tournaments we had, under 19 World Cup and everything, the venues and games at different venues and stuff like that. And I understand the logistical nightmare that presented CSA, but I thought they handled that very well. And even test matches starting midweek was a function of venues being unavailable and fitting in all of this amongst these other global tournaments that we were hosting in South Africa. So I get that. And it kind of made it feel like they didn't care about domestic cricket or 4-day cricket, and they didn't want people to watch. I think there's enough interest now for us to actually have a rule that you can even do Thursday to Sunday and have domestic games like we used to. We used to have Thursday to Sunday, have domestic games, start on those days, and we go to Sunday. To at least, even if it's a day 3, you have a day 3 of a Titans and a Lions. But the one things I'd like to have are, it is a World Cup year, and I understand, but if we start early enough in August or late August with 4-day series, and I hope Coach Shukri does this, all the Proteas need to be available for their sides. They need to be playing. You want strength versus strength. You want to see which diamonds can handle the heat of a Kagiso 150. You saw yesterday with the Dutch the Dutch Scott O'Dowd when he was getting peppered, or was the other dude? Yeah, they were just getting peppered by. They don't face that pace. They never do, right? So if you can handle that, right, it makes it easier for us to say, yeah, no, we saw that game, and it's a couple of games. It's not the entire season, just 2 or 3. We need to be working towards adding more 4-day games. That's a wish list I'd like. Obviously, with the money, you can start with 10, and go back and then try and move that on, because you need some sort of a large enough sample size and give guys a chance. If it's 14, it'd be great. But we've been crying about this. But my biggest thing for next season, everything else can sit aside. My biggest thing for next season is we need to professionalize, make steps towards professionalizing the women's domestic setup. We need to find ways to give them, even if it's a basic entry level salary, with moves to making them fully professional and on the same level as men, to make sure that we don't lose the gains of what that World Cup was. That World Cup meant so much more. It lit a fire in girls' sport, where parents are asking where their girls can play. It added another option to the table for girls' sport, not only netball and soccer, but now you've got cricket. And you need to try and make sure that there is a route to professionalism for a child who's a teenager looking at that squad and going, I can do this. We have an under-19 team, so that's a tick. Now we need to professionalize the women's game. And also, Graham, if you're listening to anybody from SA20 listening to it, I know people do listen to our podcast and know how far you want to get to 46 minutes. But if you do, thank you very much. We really do appreciate it. 1 week, 3 games, 3 teams, 45 of the best, not even, you can pick the 30 best players in South Africa to play 3 games in that week. It can be a double header before the main game, before the main playoff game, right? 3 teams, similar to what the women's IPL did in India. You're going to have 5 internationals. So you pay 15 internationals, and then you have 30 South Africans, or even 12 internationals and 30 South Africans. Put them into the team. Let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can come up with. And let them play, showcase them on SuperSport before the main games. Similar to that. And let's do that. I know we won't have a fully fledged women's league until the next 5 years, but this is something small that you can do. You can pay them a base fee. You won't get the best players in the world, but you'll get some players who want to come and play. And that's how you start. That's how you start. That's all I ask. That's all I ask. You can call it the Women's Super League like you've always called it. It's just now more directed. And you will have fans at the stadium. You'll make sure that the fans get to know our players, and our players get to play against proper competition. It's strength versus strength. That's all I ask. And so, yeah, that's my thing for next year, next season. But well done for this year's CSA and SA20 teams and everyone else. It was great. Proteas, you're on a good wicket. I am looking forward to the World Cup at the end of the year. We're going to walk in as a favorite, which is going to be a problem. Or we might actually walk in as a dark horse, which will be fine. But the way this team's, at least all 3 teams are humming, I'm excited. I'm even excited for West Indies in 2024, because I think we can actually win that T20 World Cup if we have all our ducks in a row. So, yeah. Tim, do you have any final words before we go?
No. I think I was just thinking out loud. I don't want this to become a wish list for 2023, 2024. But I will just sign off by saying, can it please not be the 4-day series, the 1-day cup, the T20 challenge? Look for sponsorships.
We want sponsors. Yes.
We want sponsors now. So there's 3 competitions there.
Sponsor them, come sponsor us.
Yes. You sponsor those competitions. The requirement is that you sponsor us once a week. Indeed, there we go.
No, look, I will send out letters to them. Whoever sponsors, I'll send out a letter and be like, we'll talk about you the whole time. We'll name drop you all the time.
Yes, absolutely.
But outside of that, yeah, that's what it is. But remember, we're going to have another podcast later in the week. Then we're going to be discussing the early movements in the domestic season. Who's going where? what it means, what it looks like. We don't have the full information of everything, and that's a conversation at the beginning of the season. But for now, it's just a nice little teaser to know who's going where, who's coming where. The Knights people are leaving, going everywhere else. And so it's going to be, I think it's going to be a great show. So please do watch out for that. So you get to know. So when you go to the stage, you're like, yeah, Mpho mentioned him. Mpho mentioned him. Or Tim mentioned him, and Tim said this about him. So yeah, we're getting you ready. It'll be the last of our season. And then should the Proteas play another game or our women's team play another game, we'll be back on for podcasts like we always do. But thank you very much for the support throughout the season. Really do appreciate it. And yeah, outside of that, Tim, it's goodbye and le sale kakahiso.